Okay, Commissioners, will you please take your seats? I'd like to call to order the Government Operations Meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We need a motion to adopt the agenda, moved by Carabelli, supported by Kleinfeld. Please vote on the adoption of the agenda. Okay. And Commissioner Kraft is unable to attend today's meeting. He has a CMH meeting, just to let everyone know. No excuse, okay. Next item is public participation. Anyone wish to address this body? Seeing no one from the public, we'll go on to appointment interviews. 5A, Substance Use Disorder Oversight Policy Board. Board appointment, 2 vacancies. 3-year term to expire on September 30th, 2021. We have 2 wonderful individuals here today for reappointment. The first is Kathleen Rager. Hello, Kathleen. How are you? If you want to come up here, tell us a little bit. Oh, no, to the microphone right there. Yep. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and the challenges and work that you do there on the board. So, and you have to push the button, the red button. The base of the speaker.
Okay, now it's red. Now it's red.
Very good.
Okay, thank you. Hi. I know some of you and have been up here once before for a reappointment. So I'll let my resume stand for itself. Just to give you very briefly, I was the executive director at CARE, now it's called CARE of Southeastern Michigan, and we were the access center for those people seeking assessments for substance abuse disorders through the community of mental health. I was there for 24 years, and approximately the last 10 years, I was the executive director. We saw significant change over the years because of research and changes in Lansing and changes in our own community. Some of the things that I've seen and the reason I wanted to stay involved is that we've recognized now that substance abuse is a disease. It's a chronic disease, and it needs more than just treatment, a 21-day meeting, a 21-day inpatient treatment. And this county is moving in a direction that's going to accommodate much longer stays and support services for people who have addictions. Saying that it's a disease is one thing, but you and I both know that it's a disease like no other disease. It ravages our community, and it really does terrible things to our families. I lost my brother when he was 38 from alcoholism, and I lost a sister when she was 50 from alcoholism and prescription drugs. But I've also met many, many people that have been in long-term recovery. One of my closest friends has not had a drink in 35 years. So we know that it's possible. There's a couple of other things that I wanted to share that's happened that I think is really significant. The stigma that was around, certainly when I started 25, now it's 30 years ago, has decreased, and it's because of the efforts of people in this community. When I was at CARE, Macomb allowed us to start a group called Project Vox, and it was the voice of recovery. And some of you may have seen these calendars. These have been around now for 10 years, and I brought enough for each one of you to have one. When we first started printing these calendars with the funding from Henry Ford Hospital, we couldn't get anybody to put their name on one of these calendars. They were afraid that their boss would fire them or their mother-in-law might find out or whatever. Now when they print these calendars, they have a line of people standing that want to show that they've been in recovery, they're paying taxes, they're supporting their families, they're doing good things. And so I think that these types of things are happening. We've also started the community has started peer support people, where peers work with people who are in new recovery. They have just come out of treatment and they need those resources. We have housing now, transitional housing for people so that they can get a job and they can get a start back into the community. So a lot of great things are happening, and I want to still continue to be a part of that. So I hope that you'll consider my reappointment. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Commissioner Brown?
Well, you're obviously the people we want on our committees and boards. I mean,
Thank you.
You're definitely a knowledgeable advocate, passionate. Took this opportunity to make a commercial for what you represent and doing. Bravo, very good. You certainly have my full support, and thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for you right here.
Sure.
The county jail, which right through the windows we can see the county jail right there. Many prisoners are there due to drugs and substance abuse. And I'm wondering, your board, how do you deal with that? Do you deal with that at all?
Yes.
The needs of the prisoners that we have in our jail, you know, that are there. I think 50% are there for drug abuse. Maybe Commissioner Leonetti, you might know better. You're a lawyer. Yeah. The other lawyers on our board. But.
Barb Caskey, who runs one of the programs at the jail, is on this committee, the, what is the committee? Policy committee. She's on the board, and we're working very closely with her. They have some concerns at the jail because of space and those kinds of issues. We did just have a young man that was brought to my attention. Actually, it's my nephew. See, I'm very open. Who spent time in the jail and then was transported to a 21-day residential center and then was given a peer support person when he got out. So yes, the jail is really doing what they can do with the conditions that we have. There's also going to be possible changes where the people that are getting out of the jail, in some instances, will be working more closely with Macomb County Office of Substance Abuse to access treatment. That's still in the works in Lansing, but we're hoping that that will happen.
Thank you. Commissioner Leonetti?
Thank you, Chairman. Good to see you, Kathleen. I'm glad that you're doing this again. You're aware, too, about the different drug court programs that we have.
Yes.
And they're seeming to expand. And as Commissioner Myjak said, I myself have some clients that have availed themselves of the drug courts. Do you think we need more? I mean, what's your take? And I know Ryan's here too. He's going to have a little bit to say.
I think Ryan would be better
right.
able to answer that question.
I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that too. I mean, where do you think we are? Is there enough or more?
You know, I really don't know. I know they've opened up in a couple more. I think Roseville's opened up, and Warren, of course, has had one for a long time, and of course the county one. I don't think that there could ever be enough help, depending what that looks like in each community. I know Judge LeDuc has been involved in doing some, I don't know if preliminary or where they're moving on that, but I know, and like I said, I think Ryan could probably answer those questions. But we know that's one of the conditions of the disease. People get in trouble. And so when those can be addressed the earlier on, you know, people used to say, you know, you have to hit bottom before you get help. They can't get help until they hit bottom. That's not true. By the time my brother hit bottom, he was next to dad and died very soon after that. We need to intervene as soon as we can, so I think the drug courts are a perfect place to do that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your good work.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Duje?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question, who's the judge in drug court in Mount Clemens now?
I don't know. Ryan probably knows.
Jennifer Fawns and Judge Joe Toya, I believe, are two right now.
Okay.
All right, thank
When
you.
I was involved in that was Burnett that was there.
I
so I don't know.
remember when Judge Dawn
She's in
Grunberg was
Warren.
doing it
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah, she's in Warren, or
Thank
was
you,
in
Mr.
Warren.
Chairman.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Any questions or comments? Commissioner Brown, once again.
We have a surplus of spaces at the youth home. We got 119 beds or something like that, where we got 40 filled. Maybe that could be an option for us to put some people in, put the drug rehabilitation kids in some of those things, or whoever they happen to be.
Just thought.
Yeah, I don't know
It's a
what
big
the
picture
availability is.
thinking,
Or,
but something maybe to talk
Yeah.
just occurs to me.
I think you guys might be able to make it happen.
Well, we can make it happen, just we need to have a plan.
Yeah,
And if there's a need.
always have to have a plan.
So anyway, just we're thinking, because we got surplus space we may need to do something with. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for coming here today. And I did lose a cousin to alcohol and drugs a number of years ago, so I'm just sharing with you my story,
Yeah.
family story as
It's-
well. So
It's just, over the 24 years, I mean, I've been retired 6, I've seen this evolve, and it's really, really exciting. And we are getting more funding. through some funding from the federal government. So more things can be done, and it's just something that needs to be continued and considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Next on the list, Ryan Zemke. Hello, Ryan. Thank you for coming here today. Thank you for your reappointment application.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Ryan Zemke. I am applying for reappointment. I've been on the board for the last 3 years at this point. My current position as of the last 6 months, I am now the magistrate full-time at the 41B District Court in Clinton Township. Prior to that, I was a attorney, which isn't as negative as you guys make it seem, for the last 9 years. No, I'm kidding. I fell into the opioid epidemic by accident. I got involved in the drug court with Judge Linda Davis in Clinton Township. I served on that drug court for 3 or 4 years. I also served on the Veterans Court, which also deals in substance abuse at 41B. And at the end of my time as a defense attorney, I was also in the 40th District Court in St. Clair Shores through Judge Frederick Conjoli's drug court that he had. So I don't have a personal story. I don't have a family story, but certainly the people I've encountered through drug court have become almost like children to me. I'm on the board of directors for Families Against Narcotics. And just to be honest with you, at this point, I kind of take some of this stuff personally, both as someone that knows people in recovery and both as a member of the community, a parent of small children. Certainly want to leave things in a better place as my kids continue to grow up so that I'm not facing this as a parent. 1 in 4 people have a personal story at this point. I believe the study that came out a couple years ago was that 80% of our jail is suffering from addiction at this point.
Thank you. 80%.
But when I go to events like our fan run and I see the memory tent and I see families in our drug court and I have to talk to them, unfortunately we've saved a lot more than we've lost, but it does happen when I have to go to those funerals. When I see the amount of money that we have control over to help with this epidemic and I see the numbers that continue to rise, I take that personally. I don't like going to meetings for the purpose of going to meetings. I'm not there to say yes and rubber stamp everything and continue to let this quadruple every 10 years. That's not to say we're doing anything wrong as a county. If there's a way to make this better, if there's a way to help somebody recover, get them on the right path, I'm all for it. I know a lot of this goes through best practices and grant writing, and there's a lot that goes into that, and we've been doing a lot of the same things for the last 25 years. And we're in this problem, and I'm open to different ways to get it fixed. I can tell you in the last 3 years, I've been the only dissenting vote at a meeting. Everything else has been a unanimous vote. And I don't say that, again, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I want to continue to challenge our community mental health department, our Office of Substance Abuse. I want to find new ways as new things become available to help those who need it the most so that one family doesn't have to go through this, or they can get out of it before they get too far down the hole and lose someone. When I see those numbers come out where our death rate continues to grow, and I know that I'm on this board that controls a substantial amount of funding to help correct that, I take that personally. I look at people in the community are looking to us, looking to our offices for help, and I know it's not as simple as spending money on something, but if I go home at night and I don't feel like I serve this board properly by trying to figure out every possible way to make this epidemic come to an end and start to curtail, there's certainly no magic wand, but I want to see it through. I want to see it get better, and I want to do everything I can to do that. If you want me to touch on some of the prior questions, we do have a large number of drug courts in our county. It's Romeo, Clinton Township, which also serves Mount Clemens and Harrison Township, Warren, St. Clair Shores County Drug Court through felony, through adult drug court. The answer would be yes, we absolutely need more specialty courts. If you believe the studies from the National Association of Drug Court Professionals, for every $1 that gets spent on a drug court program, there's a $27 return to the community. So as the people who control the purse strings for the budget, I know you guys are always looking for the most bang for your buck, how you can spend things. These programs have had absolute positive effects. They're 3 times less likely to reoffend, which saves the courts money, saves the sheriff's department's money, saves everybody money down the line. Healthcare, you name it, the ripple effect is huge. With regards to the juvenile court, we did have a juvenile drug court. If you believe the same studies that can show that drug court's 98% effective if you follow best practices, juvenile drug court at this point is at its best 1% effective. The reasoning behind that, without going too far down the rabbit hole, is that the brain isn't fully developed until you're 25. So they're finding that a lot of the stuff that they're instituting with juveniles, it just isn't clicking. So they kind of stopped that program because it wasn't entirely effective. There is value to treatment. As far as being able to do it out of the Juvenile Justice Center, where I know there are a plethora of beds, certainly that would probably have to be an adult program to get you the most return on your dollar. That being said, I know they're going through jail renovations. I know they're looking at that in a great deal right now. Certainly, the judges in this county have been looking for a low-security medical treatment facility that they can help this addiction epidemic. The problem right now is if you send them out to a inpatient facility, they're free to walk out the door as soon as they get there. There's nothing keeping them there. So to have something perhaps in the county jail or even a satellite at the Juvenile Justice Center where they can do the treatment programs but still keep that door locked would certainly be good. But again, in many cases, you can't just force someone to recover. They have to be ready to recover. We see it in drug court. We see people that have been to 17, 18 recovery facilities, in-state, out-of-state, you name it, and you ask them why drug court worked for them, and they just say, because I wanted it to work this time. It's that simple. If I had the magic potion to make people want to recover, we could get out of this a lot faster. But the key is everybody's not going to recover the same way. We need to continue to have options. We need to be being open to new options, such as some of the new treatment modalities, facilities, some of the medications even that are non-narcotic, such as a Vivitrol, are all great things that we should be exploring for a county. And I'm sorry for talking so long, but I just want to continue to push the county to be a leader in this instead of following other counties' leads. I think we have a great opportunity. We have a great base of knowledge on our board to continue to, frankly, be the leader in the state with this regards. We have a great community for that. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Leonetti?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Ryan, good to see you. You know, you have a unique kind of position here because you're a magistrate. So, you know, sometimes when we come in front of you on an initial arraignment with a bond condition, you're really the first line to get information on maybe bond conditions to sort of get an addict on the right path right from the beginning. Now, you know, Sheriff Wickersham and the jail study that we had said we really want to push pretrial services. Would that help you? Would that give you more information so that when you're assessing bond conditions on arraignments, you know, if I'm in front of you and I know I have a person who uses drugs, I'll tell you that. Yep. You know that. I'll say, look, this guy's stealing because he's got a drug problem. Yes. And you'll usually put him on drug testing. Not all attorneys are going to do that, you know, and sometimes they don't have to do that. But I think you would agree having more information for pretrial services would help us in that regard, wouldn't it?
Correct. And some of the issue is in, for example, Oakland County. If you get arrested in Clinton Township, the Oakland County equivalent, you get taken to the county jail. They go to pretrial services. They do an interview, ask you things. When's the last time you used? History, they run the report. The judges get that. Right now, I will only get that report from Community Corrections, who does do a great job with that, if they are arrested by the Sheriff's Department or if Clinton Township transports them. So if they don't make it out of a local jail, I don't get a report on that. I'm kind of shooting in the dark. Now, in my experience, I can kind of tell from a record or a police report what should be done. But to be honest, the best way for me to help them is to get them drug testing from the bat, as opposed to then putting them on probation where they test for the first time and fail. If my judges know that, the sentencing judges know that there's an issue, they can then correct that, which oftentimes is not the best case, would be incarceration. So if they see, listen, this guy's on bond and he's still using, it's clearly a disease in his brain, he can't stop using, let's get him the treatment he needs, and they can assess that at a sentencing date, presuming that he pleads guilty. Everyone's innocent unless proven guilty. But if there is something I can uncover to help the judges address that down the line other than incarcerating them, certainly something my court's open to. And then just from a personal point of reference, if I get someone that comes in front of my court for arraignment and they need help, I will indicate to them that I'm more than happy to, I'm in that court 8 to 4:30 every day if they need help. Come in and talk to me. I'm aware of a lot of the access programs, Hope Not Handcuffs, whatever they want to get help, I'm willing to get them the help within reason. We are here. There are programs that frankly could maybe be better advertised through the county that we're aware of through the board, but maybe some people aren't. And if they want me to help them place them or make a call or get them a contact, I'm more than happy to help them do that without repercussion with regards to the case they have before me.
You think it would help then in some ways if we were to promote some of these other programs?
Well, in talking to some of the parents, and if it was me, and I'm just on that millennial, not millennial range, if I had a child in addiction, and I'm sure some of you, where's the first place you're going to go? How many of you know the access number line? Not very many of you. That's not necessarily their fault. You're going to go on the internet, you're going to Google Macomb County addiction. Our website for Macosa, I think, is from 2004. It's got a purpose, but is it easy to use? Probably not. I'm going to look on Facebook. I want to see an ad, something I'm going to remember. That's kind of how people are doing now. They're not reading the newspaper. They're not going to fairs and picking up brochures and keeping them. It's on your fingertips. It's on the computer. I think we need to push what we have. We do have great services available. We can always do more, but what we have is good. We just need to make it known. You know?
Okay. I'm gonna make a note about the website. Thanks, Ryan. Good to see you.
No
All
problem.
right.
Thank you, guys.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for coming, and the appointment will be made at September 20th full board meeting. Thank you for coming here today. Item 6, presentation by SEMCOG, Michigan Roads. Hello, Amy Mangus, and we have also here William Anderson.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I have to go back. 5B, Holder Advisory Committee, Carol Thompson. Is Carol Thompson here today? She's not here today. That's the appointment for the Older Adult Advisory Committee. That appointment would be made at the September 20th meeting as well, and that's Commissioner Kraft's appointment representative, so to speak. Okay, now we're ready for the SEMCOG presentation. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for asking us to be here today, and Commissioner Carabelli for setting this up. My name's Amy Mangus. I'm the Deputy Director. I was here a couple months ago with Kathleen Lamock, our Executive Director. I asked to join the presentation just for a minute to give you an update on a couple of items that I know that we talked about and I thought you would be interested in. One is we talked briefly about the drinking water monitoring network. Many of you were interested in that, and I just wanted to bring you up to speed that the equipment has been ordered, and so it should be in all of the plants up and down the Huron to Erie corridor, including all of them in Macomb County by the end of October at the latest. So we've had really good reception from the communities, agreed with all of the maintenance requirements and everything else. So we've made great progress. I wanted to give you a sneak preview of a couple of items. One is we began visually mapping, began visually mapping what we're calling 360-degree imagery. So it's like Google Street View, but for our water trails and our land trails, and we're getting the data in. We're premiering it at our September Executive Committee meeting. But this is just to show you that in Macomb County, we did 80 miles of the Clinton River and Lake St. Clair, and we did 40 miles of hike-bike trails like the Macomb Orchard Trail, River Bends trails in River Bends Park, the Clinton River Hike-Bike Trail. And so this just shows you what it looks like. This is the Macomb Orchard Trail near Richmond. And you can see, basically you can click on any part along the trail and it'll show you exactly what it looks like. You'll be able to see what parking lots look like, what the facilities look like in case you're interested in taking a bike ride, or if you're interested in canoeing or kayaking, you can then look, and this is the Clinton River in Harrison Township. So that will be on our website, and you're, of course, as always, the county's been a very strong partner in all of this, out on the water with us and helping shuttle the video crews around. So we appreciate the support of the county on that, and I'm sure you'll be using the footage as well. And then just finally, from what I wanted to present is the first 2 weeks in October, we're going to be doing a public education blitz called Walk, Bike, Drive Safe. So less than 2% of all the traffic crashes in Southeast Michigan involve pedestrian and bicyclists, but over 28% of the fatalities involve pedestrian or bicyclists. So they're a very vulnerable population, and so we are starting a public education, whether you're the driver, the bicyclist, or the pedestrian, the walker, what you can do. We're going to be having radio spots, billboards, bus wraps, even at the gas pump. There's going to be information. So I just want you to know about it. We're going to be sending information out at the executive committee meeting. If there's ways you can help publicize this as well, we'd really appreciate it. And also just to say we appreciate your support, because you all and your support of our membership is what's being able to do this program. So with that, I'm going to give it over to Bill for what you asked him to present on today.
All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about road funding. And we've developed a lot of different numbers because over the last year, we've heard a lot of questions about road funding. And so what we want to do is give you a little perspective on what's happening. Now, this is page 1 of a 3-page flow chart that shows how the state distributes the road funding under Public Act 51. And what I wanted to do is pull out some of the key numbers from that flow chart to give you a perspective on where the money is going, especially to the local governments, and how it flows. So first of all, we start off with the fact that between fuel taxes and registration fees, the state's collecting about $2.5 billion a year. The Public Act 51 formula says 21.8% of the money distributed goes back to the 533 cities and villages. 39.1% goes back to the 83 county road commissions, and 31.91% stays with the state to deal with the main roads. Now, to give you an idea, for the cities and villages, this year the state was distributing just under $500 million. Most of that goes to the major street fund. First, every city gets $44.78 this year. This changes every year, and these are the numbers as of March. $44.78 per person, plus $13,000 per mile, and that's a regular linear mile. Doesn't matter whether it's 2 lanes or 4 lanes or whatever, times a population factor. So for instance, the city of Sterling Heights or the city of Warren is going to have maybe a population factor of 1.8, whereas Richmond might have a population factor of 1.2. So it's all based upon a scale of population. Detroit gets the most. If you're a small little village, you might only get a population factor of 1.1. So it depends on how many residents are in the city. This takes into account also the likelihood of you having like multiple lane roads, because it's giving more money for bigger populations, assumption more cars on the street. Then your local streets, and every road has a designation, whether it's a major street or a local street. You get another $14.93 to basically take care of the side streets, and $3,400 per mile. Now, just remember how much it costs to pave a road. I'm going to be assessed a special assessment for the road in front of my house by my township. It's a very standard asphalt road, ditches on the side, nothing special. That's $250,000 per mile. So keep that in the back of your head as we talk about that. That's as simple as you can get. County factors. Basically, just under $900 million is distributed to the counties. 86% goes through a general distribution formula. 10% is distributed to counties that have urban roads, and most of the roads in this county are classified as urban roads, and 4% supplemental to the local road system. So, for the 86%, 75% is distributed for primary roads, with 75% of that prorated based on the county registration fees. So in other words, however much is collected in the county is a major factor in how much is distributed back to the county. 10% for the main roads in the counties on a mileage basis at $2,000 per mile. That goes a long way when you need to repave a road. And 15% is an equal distribution amongst the 83 counties. And then 25% is distributed for the local roads. These would be the subdivision and non-prime roads. And 65% of that is based on mileage at $2,300 a mile. And again, 35% on population, or $16 a person. So again, not a lot of money. Now, here's what does make a difference for the urban areas. County urban roads take the 10%, and they effectively get an extra $12,000 per mile for their primary roads, an extra $2,000 per mile for those side and back roads. So understand that no, for instance, Macomb County doesn't get the same amount of money for a mile of road with a county jurisdiction here as, say, St. Clair County. You are going to get significantly more money per mile of road than the rural counties do. So to put it into perspective, you all should have this sheet in front of you. I did was I looked at, there were questions. How is the money being distributed? Is it a fair distribution? Well, there was also a question of what would happen if we went to centerline miles instead of just regular straight miles. There's not a whole lot of difference between centerline miles and mainline miles. Only about 1% of the roads have multiple lanes to them above the two. So you can see here the number of centerline miles, population lane miles of every county within the SEMCOG region. And I've looked at how much the county receives, how much the cities and villages within each county receives, and the total amount per centerline mile for each county. So for instance, Macomb County receives the equivalent of about $28,000 per mile of road per year, and this is all based on this current year's distribution, or about $12,000 per lane mile. And so if you look at a comparison to the other counties and the other parts of the state, Macomb County comes in fairly close to what you would find in Wayne County and Oakland County, which makes a lot of sense. But you would see, for instance, you're receiving over twice as much as Livingston County, 60% more than Monroe County. And in fact, if you look at the state less the region, outside of the 7 counties here, county road agencies and city road agencies outside of our 7 counties are receiving an average of about $8,000 per mile, while the road agencies within our 7 counties are receiving about $23,000 per mile. Now, we'll flip it. What about per capita? There is where Macomb County receives less than the state average. So for instance, Macomb County is receiving about $116 per average, while the state overall, it's $140 per person. Let me put it a different way. Our region, 7 counties, has 47.6% of the population. We have 20.7% of the centerline miles. We have 21.7% of the lane miles. See, there's not a big difference there. 20 and 20, and we get 42% of the money. So, gives you a little perspective. Now, let's take a look at how Michigan is doing compared to the rest of the nation. And this is all information based on U.S. Census information. That you can go to the U.S. Census Bureau and look at state and federal revenues and expenditures and find all kinds of good information. The latest information is from 2015, but I have updated some of the numbers for Michigan to what we are spending in 2018, so that the numbers will reflect the legislature's proposals to increase funding. So from traditional funding sources, that being gas tax, vehicle registration fees, and federal government revenues, the average across the nation is $344 per person. In Michigan, now that we've increased the registration fees and the gas taxes, we're up to about $369. So, you know, a couple percent higher than national average. However,
This is the problem right here.
the largest source of funding in this country is not gas taxes. It's not vehicle registration fees. It's other sources of revenue. Michigan has traditionally avoided at all costs adding any other revenues into the transportation fund. In fact, the state never put general fund revenues into the transportation budget until just a couple of years ago. On average, the rest of the nation averages about $188 per person in additional revenues going into transportation purposes, other than those traditional 3 sources. In 2018, Michigan is putting in a whopping $39 per person. If you want to translate that, understand we got 10 million people, so that's equivalent to about $400 million. Now, let's take a look at how we spend our money as compared to where we get it. On these pie charts, the blue part of the pie chart is talking about how much, on average, in this nation, we spend on operations and maintenance for our roads. So not construction, operations and maintenance. National average is $242 per person. Michigan, it's $229 per person. Just about the same. It's pretty much average. But of course, that includes things like snow removal, which a lot of the country doesn't have to deal with, pothole filling, which we seem to have an extraordinary amount of costs associated with that. If you look and compare us to the rest of the Great Lakes states, we're spending about 15% less on operations and maintenance than the rest of the Great Lakes states. But then if you look at the kind of pumpkin color, this is where it really shows up. This is capital outlay. How much? And this $179 is reflecting what we should be spending this year if all of the new money goes into construction, which it's not. But if it all goes into construction, we'd be up to $179 compared to the national average of $294. That's a big difference. And I think this chart displays it even better. Here's $295 for the US average on how much the average state is spending on construction on roads per year. Prior to us increasing the gas tax, we were at $141, less than half the national average. We were dead last in the nation. We were dead last in the nation in 1992. We were dead last in the nation in 1997. We were dead last in the nation in 2002. We got off of the bottom during the era time. We were dead last in 2007, now 2012. We were dead last in 2015. When we put all the money in, and this chart is showing how much money will be there for construction in 2021, when we fully implement the legislature's program, we may get up to 40th in the nation in spending for road construction. And remember, we're below average, we're at average for operations and maintenance. What's left is road construction. We may get up to 40th if the other states don't move ahead. For instance, Indiana. Indiana just passed a new gas tax and a sales tax on all gasoline purchases with all that money going back to transportation. $1.2 billion effective immediately. They have 2/3 the population that Michigan had. That's why they have such a big bump. We were spending 1/3 of the Great Lakes region expenditures average for road construction. And we have been for years, well, a quarter of a century. When you're last for a quarter of a century, somehow our roads reflect that expenditure. There are some questions, for instance. This is the state of Michigan PACER rating. So this is all the federal aid roads in the state. 39% in poor condition, 43% in fair condition, which means they're on the way down, and we have to watch them. This is where a good asset management program attacks the 43% in fair to upgrade the roads, if you have the money. So here's the chart for the state. Here's the chart for the region. I use the same chart because they're the same numbers. 39% of our federal aid eligible roads are in poor condition, 43% in fair, 18% in good. Exactly the same as the rest of the state. Will the $1.2 billion change the future? Yes. Our decline in roads will slow down. They won't get better. Our decline in roads will slow down compared to where we were. Again, when you've been last in the nation for a quarter of a century and your fix is to get up to 40th in the nation, even after a lot of years, we haven't turned the tide on this chart. So we expect, even with the new money coming in, that it will slow the pace, but we will not change the direction to start improving the roads. What we are looking at is, for our region only, for the 7 counties, we need to be spending about $1.6 billion per year from now until
money.
2045 on construction in order to get the roads back up to 80% good or fair. That's still 20% in poor condition. We need, I think, another $200 million a year to push it up to 90%. Now, that does not include 14,000 miles that are non-federal aid roads. So some of the side roads and the subdivision roads, that doesn't include taking care of those. That's where we need to get to. And with that, did I keep your attention?
Yes, roads are,
I've been told that before.
thank you for coming here today, Mr. Anderson. Very, very interesting. That last slide is very, very serious and very scary. I'm going to start the discussion with yours truly here, just a few questions. Your slide here, SEMCOG region, it showed the percent of the population, 47.6, and then the whole region gets 42.5% of the funds.
Yes.
So would it be fair for me to say that with the amount of population we have, this region gets a little bit under the average of what we should get?
I think I did that chart because depending on which column I pick, I can answer yes or no. Really? If we look on a per capita basis, no, you don't. Given the fact that you've got 21%, we have 21% of the roads and we get 42% of the money, somebody else might say, well, no, that's not fair. This is the problem when you look at this, and this is why I'm trying to give you a lot of different perspectives. I will let you make that final determination, and frankly, it will be the legislature that makes that final determination. But saying that, I'm not so sure, I didn't know where these numbers were going to go when I started doing this. I was surprised, honestly, at how the numbers turned out. And it was interesting as I looked at it from a different perspective. When you do policy work, you like to look at it from a lot of different perspectives. Depending on how you want to look at it, I can literally say yes and I can say no.
Very good. Another couple questions, comments is the little trifold here that you handed out. The middle one here, traditional funding sources, it shows the U.S. average and Michigan. Mm-hmm. Obviously that's sort of good news that Michigan spends more on traditional funding sources.
And that's after the new increases in gas tax, and that's worth $60 on that amount. Before that, we would have been below the national average. So that's reflecting what the legislature did a couple years ago.
So the gas taxes and the registration fees applies to the state government level in terms of financing. Yes. Federal taxes, how does that get approved? Through the president or the Congress?
They have their own formulas.
Okay.
And so I'm reflecting how much the federal government is sending back to us. They send back to us everything that we send to them in gas taxes, but every state gets back at least how much they send in gas taxes. So everybody is above average. We are still at the bottom of the list in terms of amount per person being returned, or actually the percentage of our gas tax revenues being returned to us. Other states are like receiving back 20% above what they send. We're at the bottom of the list on that, and have been.
But clearly, the traditional funding sources comes from the state government and the federal government.
Yes.
Okay, so now this last page here, other funding sources. Other funding sources, I'm looking here, general fund.
Yep.
Basically, all of these look like they fall under the jurisdiction of the state government, except for property tax. All the local communities now are having ballot proposals or millages for property tax increases. So that's my question. All these other funding sources, does that all fall under the state level?
No.
Okay, what does it fall under then?
Actually, you will find in many areas, local option sales taxes go to the roads, local option income taxes go to the roads. Actually, Michigan probably does not support its roads locally as much as you will find in other states.
Can you briefly explain one or two examples of that you just mentioned? Because I've never heard of that, and I'm wondering how does that work?
This is another area that I was quite surprised as I went into this after working with the legislature and, working with that philosophy for 25 years, that, we depend upon our gas taxes, registration fees, and federal aid, and that's how we pay for things. And anything else that goes into it, it's like, shouldn't have to be there. Probably in the 1970s, local governments started figuring out that the state and feds weren't putting up enough money. And so a lot of states have developed resources. Wisconsin, as an example, uses a lot of local revenues to supplement the road revenues. And like I said, what you will find is you might have a regional sales tax. And a lot of times those regional sales taxes are dedicated to funding the roads within that region.
So that would be, as an example,
Yes.
SEMCOG is a region, 7
Yes.
counties. And if SEMCOG came up with a ballot proposal or initiative,
Or,
that could happen that way, is what you're saying.
A lot of times these things are handled on a larger than one community basis. And of course, almost, a lot of our revenue sources, it's the local community like Clinton Township that went out for the ballot proposal, asking for more property taxes for roads. Really in this state, our local governments, that's our one and only option, is more property taxes. And I think that is probably our biggest barrier, is that everything we do, it's like, okay, let's ask for more property taxes. Other states have moved away from that. And like I said, local option income tax, local option sales tax, tolls in some states. Pennsylvania generates a lot of money. Ohio, it's not that great an amount of money. Illinois generates a lot of money through tolls.
Who do toll roads, who does that fall under as far as government jurisdiction? Like, that would be like MDOT?
Most is state,
State.
but there are some local governments that actually toll roads.
Okay, so I guess my whole purpose of asking you all these examples is just how much of a reliance is this on state, federal, and local, and it looks like it's a combination of all.
It is.
Me, in my opinion, I think that if the state were able to figure out more revenue, if we had more revenue from the state, dedicated sources, you'd have less of a reliance to solve this at the local level. I brought up, as one commissioner, I brought up a proposal or suggestion, we should have a 1 mil ballot proposal for residents here in the county. I'm just speaking for myself. Other commissioners have opposed that. But I look at that as a way of trying to solve this, as a property tax solution somehow with our lack of road funding. If the state funded us properly the way they should, that wouldn't come up, but we're in reality and we have to figure those things out.
I think we have 28 counties in the state that levy a property tax for roads. But it has to come through the county board, because obviously the county road commissions or the county road agencies don't have the authority to ask for that in this state.
My final question is, I've gone to SEMCOG meetings. I'm an alternate delegate over the last couple of years. I've attended the meetings. I've spoken up at some meetings regarding roads, regarding a regional tax for roads just for the region. But it seems like that's never gone anywhere. Have you heard anything with the SEMCOG members or the group to implement something like this?
I have had multiple discussions just in the last month from city, township, and county level elected officials and administrators starting to seriously talk about what if we do a ballot proposal and create a method for generating more revenue. And I do believe that that conversation is really starting to percolate.
I see. Thank you very much for answering my questions. Back on the list here, I have a list of speakers: Carabelli, Kleinfeld, Leonetti, and Smith. Commissioner Carabelli.
I'm glad I never generate any controversy.
Thank you both for coming. I appreciate it. I seen this presentation done at SEMCOG, and I was very impressed with it, and I thought it was important for you to come and share it firsthand, so thank you.
Thank you.
A couple things I want to touch on. No matter how you look at how Act 51 distributes the money, everybody wants to say we have to change Act 51, we have to change Act 51. Well, the reality is, do we really need to change Act 51 or just put more money into it? Because when you look at it, if you don't put enough money into it, you don't have enough money to do what you're doing. And how it's broken down, if you go look by total lane miles, look at all the ways these were broken down. By population, okay, we're getting less money than Wayne and Oakland, but they have more people than us. So I don't know how you would break this down and make it any better for Macomb County, other than you say, hey, Macomb County is the best, give us more than everybody else. So the reality is Act 51, do you think there's major changes, other than more money obviously needs to be put into it? Do you, and maybe you don't want to answer, but do you think that there's major change that need to happen to Act 51?
I have heard this conversation when I was working with the legislature with a guy named Curtis Hertel and Rick Fessler when they were the chairs of the House and Senate Transportation Committee. That was back in the 80s. And they never got anywhere because when you go into that formula, I call it the spider web. You go and you take one strand and you try and move it, and the whole web starts shaking. And so all of a sudden you say, okay, well, if I do this, and you get everybody else mad at you, it's hard to get, 56 and 20, which are the magic numbers in the legislature. If you are adding more money, you might then be able to move away from the formula and put the money in a little different distribution, because then you're not taking money away from anybody. You try and take money away from somebody right now on roads, there is no place in the state that is having an easy time of getting their roads in order. They are thrilled with the new money that's coming in from the state, that they're starting to get some projects done, but they have such a huge backlog. I mean, our 2045 plan has $30 billion worth of projects in it. And you ask our engineers, is that everything we need to do? And they'll laugh. That's what they can do between now and 2045 with the money that we're anticipating. And probably a bigger issue is our limiter always seems to be how much money we get from the federal government. On major projects, we won't do the project until we got the federal 80% match. I'll give you a hint. We use all the money from the federal government we can. It is not enough to handle all the projects we need to do. This means the next project we need to do is going to be 100% funded by us, because there won't be a match from the federal government. And that makes the next project all that much more difficult to do.
Okay. The next part of my question goes into the federal dollars that we receive back. Is it a match with the amount of money that we're putting in that we get back?
We make sure that every dollar that's available to us is expended. And we have most of that money, we have to put up like a 20% match to get it.
So my question is, we're receiving everything back by the amount of money that we're putting into it.
Yes.
So the more money we put into it, the more money we'll be receiving back.
If the federal government ever changes, well, let's put it this way. The federal gas tax has remained the same for decades as well at 19.
We actually had the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, though, come out and support a gas tax increase for the first time.
Now, the thing is, the federal funds operate both on gas tax revenues, but the federal government itself is supplementing that with its own general revenues. So we could potentially increase the gas tax, and if the federal government withholds its extra subsidy, that's not going to change much of anything for anybody. I mean, you have to put the more money in and keep the support that's been there along for us to see a difference from that side. So that's a challenge as well.
Okay. Then the next part of the question comes into, we all know with fuel-efficient vehicles and mandates from the federal government, battery vehicles and all this, people are not buying as much gas as we did before. How have other states adjusted on this? Because Michigan hasn't adjusted on this. How have they adjusted on that loss of revenue at the gas pump?
I think everybody's adjusted poorly. There are experiments going on out, I think Washington or Oregon, for instance, is experimenting with vehicle miles traveled, where you basically identify how many miles you drove, and you pay a tax based on how much it was, kind of like your gas bill. You know, I use this much natural gas, I pay this much to consumers for it. That's beginning to start trickulating. The chair of the Federal Transportation Committee, who's retiring at the end of the year, congressmen get bolder on their way out, and he suggested that we need to really look at that in terms of starting to go and look at a vehicle miles traveled tax, simply because the concept of a direct relationship of how much gas you use and how many miles you drive is becoming less and less valid.
Right. Okay, then the last part is that, you know, where does MCOG stand on making recommendations to the state and the region as far as, do we go on the path we're going and try to do expansion and keep minimizing the maintenance and repair, or do we cancel all the new construction and 100% go back to putting the money into prevention to extend what you have and repairing what you have?
The issue of taking care of what you have versus expansion has been a debate within the SEMCOG region for a couple decades.
But our long-range transportation plan, it has the priority of reconstruction of existing roadways as the priority over expansion of roadways, and it's been like that for many years. So
there are some small projects, I mean,
besides like some of the freeway projects.
yeah, there's a couple of freeway projects, but expansion is not even close to being a significant component of the plan that we work with.
Not in the small amount of growth that our region actually is seeing compared to other parts of the country.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you, Chair. First, with respect to the revenue that the other states are doing, our state didn't they recently, it was either the sales tax or the income tax for local cities, didn't they recently ban us from being able to do one of those? I don't remember which one. The state doesn't allow us to do local sales tax, correct?
The state constitution, the only way we could do a local sales tax would be to decrease the state sales tax. Some cities have the authority to levy an income tax. Townships don't, counties don't.
But didn't they just do something with that within the last year?
You might be going back, I think you were at the presentation when I had to try and describe the state proposal, the 1 cent state proposal. I think you were at one of the public hearings.
No, I thought it had something to do with this last year Lansing tried to implement, maybe it's a Lansing income tax. And I swear I thought the state did something to limit cities from doing that.
East Lansing just adopted their own income tax.
Yeah. Do our cities have that option?
Cities do have the option. It is extremely costly administratively.
Do you know if there's something going through the legislature right now regarding that?
There's been bills in terms of how much you can advocate for it from a local government official perspective.
No, okay.
And how often you can have the elections, you know, whether you have to hold them on even year November elections. There's bills in those areas, but
All right, I might be mistaken, so that's something I'll have to get clarified, because that wasn't my understanding on that, but that could be me. You gave us these charts regarding statewide and region-wide on Michigan, on paved federal aid road condition. Would you explain federal aid road condition versus other roads that we don't have a pie for? What's the difference?
okay. We go out, I hope you all have heard of the PACER ratings, where SEMCOG teams up with the state and the county road agencies, and we actually drive all the major roads within the 7 counties once every 2 years to evaluate their condition. And they're all graded on a scale from 1 to 10, with the highest roads being classified as good, the roads that are starting to show deterioration and fair, and those that effectively need to be replaced as poor. The roads we drive are roads that can receive federal funding matches. So your mound roads, of course, the M roads, the US roads, the interstate.
Okay.
Those are federal aid eligible roads. When you get off on, say, a connector road, that is not federal aid eligible, that's not counted. So actually, the majority of the roads in the area are not federal aid eligible,
Okay,
and
so
we do not evaluate
okay,
those.
so we don't have a pie chart on the condition statewide of all the roads compared to our area of all
I will
the
tell you,
roads.
the federal aid eligible roads are in better shape than the non-federal aid.
No, but what I mean is, you're showing us that the state is in the same condition as the region.
Yes,
But you're not showing us that with respect to all the roads. You're only showing us that with respect to the federal aid roads. Do
eligible
you
roads.
have this pie with respect to all the roads?
We do not evaluate
Okay.
all of the roads. There's 120,000 miles. But as I will tell you, if you talk to any road commissioner, that the roads that we do not evaluate are not in nearly as good a condition as the ones you see on that chart.
And
Well, the reason I'm asking is because I have commissioners, when they come into this area from other parts of the state, are in a state of shock at the condition of the roads. We had that MAC meeting down at the DIA. They couldn't believe the conditions. So you're saying they're the same, and they're telling me our roads don't look like this. So that's why I'm asking you about this map being all the roads that they would be driving on.
Those roads, the PACER evaluation system is a statewide system, and it's run through the auspices of the Asset Management Council, which we've been hearing a lot about lately. When you evaluate the condition of the road, they actually go out and audit the evaluation. So while there are different teams in every county that do the evaluation, there's actually people from the state that go out and run those same mile of roads to make sure they are being
I got
evaluated.
that. But this isn't the whole picture, is my point. I got what you're saying. All those roads are evaluated, and we're the same as the state. And what I'm saying is, this isn't the full picture. This is only the federal aid road condition picture, correct?
Which is the major roads. Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that, because I don't necessarily know that this means the rest of the state's roads are all in the same condition as ours are.
because one of the things we're trying to do is get a better handle on the local investment on local roads. Because we did a call for projects, we had some money to be able to let locals assess their local roads, to try and start to do that. And also, we're trying to do inventories and talking to communities to see, are they funding it differently, to get a better handle on that? To compare, are we in our region locally investing less than in other parts of the state or other parts of the country?
So in looking at the distribution from various perspective sheet, So on center line miles, we're at 3,475. Versus lane miles, we're at 7,877. But if you look at the total lane mile, so Macomb County it's at 12,402. And Livingston, that has less than 200,000 people, is at about 50% of us. So they've got less than a fourth of the amount of people than we do, but their total lane miles is 50% of what ours is. And the other aspect of that is we've got more population driving, but we've got more trucks. Those counties don't have the big trucks driving on the roads. They only have the population driving on the roads. So for the insinuation that it is equally shared when I see they get 50% of what we do and they have a fourth of the population doesn't ring true to me. It may ring true to others, it doesn't ring true to me.
I guess, let's take it to the perspective of Houghton County that had to deal with some significant flooding about a month ago, where they had $30 million worth of roads washed out. And their annual budget is about $1 million a year for road replacement. Yes, this is the issue that you get into the debate of, yes, you get more money in Macomb County than Livingston County. Livingston County has not the same proportion of roads because they don't have the same density of people. Take it to an extreme. You go to Keweenaw County, where they have 3,000 residents in the entire county, but they still have roads throughout the county that they have to deal with. This is the political debate of how is the formula supposed to work to allow any place in this state to be open. And by the way...
So are you indicating that was it Houghton County you said? So did they not get any disaster aid relief or
No, they
relief?
got turned down by the federal government.
So it'll be 30 years before they can rebuild?
Well, then the question will be whether the state can come through with some loans and how they will have to try and figure out those roads.
I absolutely understand in the sparse areas they still have a lot of roads to maintain. I do understand that.
We got to get going, Veronica. We have a lot of speakers here. Maybe you can ask any other questions after the meeting, but we got a lot of speakers. Or just finish up.
I would like to see my timing against your timing. I am finishing up, but
Okay.
But by the
it's
way,
by the way. Well, and the answers were a little bit long for the nature of the question, because I would ask a specific question and then I'd get a whole lot of things that. But I think my opinion is that's our job, is to advocate for this area and try to fight for the road funding in this area.
And yes, it is.
So with that, I yield. Thank you.
And by the way, we do have figures for truck traffic as well. So we can provide, for instance, how many miles of travel by truck occur in every county, because we are required to keep that as well for the federal government.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Leonetti?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad you were talking a little bit earlier about doing local analysis because, I don't know how I'm going to ask this question, but I guess the best way is to give you an example of the district I serve, okay? So my commission, District 10, represents St. Clair Shores and Harrison Township. Okay. St. Clair Shores, as a city, has a small millage, and they apply that locally to take care of their roads rather promptly and quite nice. I mean, if you look at Jefferson, you will see as soon as you get to the border of Jefferson and Harrison Township, St. Clair Shores is smooth and beautiful, and Harrison Township's like, it's like Pothole City. It's embarrassing. Harrison Township does not have a local city millage or township millage for roads. So therefore, Harrison Township is dependent on the county, which is then dependent on the state, which is then dependent on the federal government. And when I go around door knocking, I talk to people and they complain about the roads. And at least in St. Clair Shores, when they say we're paying for something, I know what's going on. I'm paying my local taxes, and I see they're fixing, this city road here, and they're fixing that road here. When I go in Harrison Township, they're mad. And, they're mad because I say, well, I try to get it from the county, but I got to fight 12 other commissioners here. And then, the county's saying I got to get it from the state, and of course the state's saying the Fed should help us out. But taxpayers look at it like this. They say, look, I'm paying on taxes. You look at this chart here. Every taxpayer in Michigan is saying, I'm paying gas taxes. Where's that money going? I'm paying my vehicle registration. Where's that money going? I pay federal taxes. Where's that money going? Is there any way, I would prefer, obviously, if Harrison had a small millage, because then Harrison Township can take care of its problems as it sees fit. I think when it comes to roads, I guess local control, to me, seems to be the best way to go. We don't have enough money locally, and we always have to rely on a little bit more. But if there's some way we could, it's almost like if we got relief from the federal government by not taxing us, if we got relief from the state by not giving us gas taxes, if we got a little relief on our vehicle registration, then Harrison Township residents might say, I will support a local millage. Or the county, as Commissioner Myjack says, hey, how about we do a relief for some of the other cities? We do a 1 mil millage, and then we can take care of our problems locally. Is there any focus on that? That's actually telling people to say take taxes away at the 30,000 feet level and give us down here at the foothills a chance to maybe raise some money for ourselves and take care of our own. Any thoughts on that?
I think when I am talking to some of these local officials, a lot of that philosophy is coming out. We have the forever debate going on, is the formula proper? And people say, well, at least if I raise it locally, I know it's going to be spent here. The challenge, obviously, with roads is I drive through 3 counties a day, and all those roads need, proper care. That's why the state and federal government's there. But it is that challenge, and people appreciate that they want to see, if they pay $1, they want to see $1 of services, and especially if it's out their front door on their road.
Well, and one of the biggest challenges, the difference between the city and the township, as you know, is the townships don't own the roads. And so, that's always been a battle for the public to understand that they're not the owners of the roads. And if they take on the maintenance of the roads or the operation of the roads, there's, issues relating to that too. It brings them into permit issues and other things because they've agreed to do some of that, which has happened in Clinton Township, for example. So it's a very difficult when you talk about townships.
Yeah. Canton Township just passed 5 mills for roads in August. Canton did. Canton. Canton Township, 5 mills for roads.
It just seems like, it's one of these things where, like, all the money comes from the top, but it seems like locally, it's where the problem's at. And locally, it seems like if we had the money locally, we would be able to take care of our own. And I'm glad to see that philosophy, I guess, is percolating.
And, this really is a basic economic development issue, because when we talk about those trucks, those trucks represent economic development, especially if we're talking Mound Road or we're talking, Warren and the manufacturing facilities there, and getting those goods on, 696 and on I-75. It's economic development from the point of view that if you have a potholed road in front of your house, when it comes time to sell that house, people always say you want good curb appeal. Well, when it's the curb that isn't appealing, it's impacting the value of the home that you're going to be selling. So this really is basic economic development, providing that basic service in an efficient and as an affordable manner as possible.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for
Chair Smith.
Thanks. I have a couple short things here. One, Rob, bring this with you when you're talking to your people. This is a nice, this is a nice chart. Listen, I got to say I appreciate the way that you proposed this in so many different ways, because when you do look at it from different angles, like Commissioner Carabelli said, Act 51 is not the, the monster, when you look at it in some ways, it's not the monster everybody's portraying it to be. And what we see right here in these 2 pages is what the real monster or problem is the other funding sources, which you pointed out. And you did mention that across the country, you're finding, and even across the state, they're starting to locally fund, realizing that, hey, listen, we can't just keep waiting for someone else to do what's right. We have to do what's right because, like you just mentioned, our property values are affected by, forget our cars and our wheels and our, just our overall general aggravation of driving on these roads. You drive down a street to look at a house that's nice and smooth, and that same house on a street that is, one of these crampy, bumpy roads, you're picking that house over the other one, even if they're the same exact house. Even if one's cheaper on the bumpier road. I mean, it is an economic developer here, and it's something that I think needs to be brought more to the attention of people who don't like the idea of throwing another tax out there, or doing something to the effect of, we need to get more money for these roads. There's no way around it. And you can see right now the state is never going to come around to it. We need to do something. But I do like the fact that you've noticed around the country that people are taking it into their own hands and doing it in their own communities. Can you expand a little bit on that?
I think when I started looking at individual states, for instance, looking at Minnesota, looking at Wisconsin, I'm trying to find states that are similar to Michigan,
Sure.
population, area, urban
Weather.
centers, that local governments are coming more into play, but that doesn't mean that the state levels are also much higher. So to get to where we need to,
Right.
I don't think it's just going to be a local tax that's going to take care of that issue. I think the major source of funds still has to come from the state level, because this is an issue, throughout the state. And I think locals can deal with the margins,
Sure.
but they can't deal with the main stuff.
Well, when you're talking 450% more that other states
Yeah.
collect out of other funding sources, I mean, that
that
you can't make
deficit's a
that
couple
up.
$1 billion a year.
Right. So that being said, I appreciate that, like I say, the all-around policy look at this to kind of get a better perspective of it. And then off that topic, and something that you started with earlier about the trail app, do you guys actually have a trail app that you can download for this? And
Yep.
what is that
So
app?
we have the Park Finder app that has all the parks and trails on it, and we're integrating this into it.
Okay.
So you'll be able to touch it and look at it on an app too, but that's
Kind
not
of
done
follow
yet.
your way, kind of like a map to get you to different trails and things like that? Okay.
Yep.
Great.
We'll get you that information, but it's not integrated yet.
Okay,
Soon.
thank you. Thanks. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Lucido.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. We've talked before about the truck weight and the damage that they do, and enforcing that truck weight limit. Could that money be used if it were more strict and regulated towards the roads?
Tomorrow morning, our legislative policy task force, which is elected officials throughout the region, are going to be sitting down, looking at developing the policies that we would like to present to the legislature. That will be one of the policies that we'll be talking about, the unique feature that in Michigan, that we allow trucks of 160,000, whereas the standard across the country is 80,000. Now, we have more axles supporting that weight, but again, this is one of those issues that has been a perpetual debate in the 35 years I've been working in some connection with the legislature, and hasn't seemed to get anywhere in those 35 years. But I hear that issue. I can tell you that when I was doing presentations in the county, and I think I did 5 of them for the ballot proposal trying to explain it, that issue popped up at every single one of those hearings.
And then just one other thing. I know tolls earns a lot of money for other states. We've never done tolls in Michigan, have we? Is that something that's ever been really considered?
I think if we ever go to a vehicle miles traveled, toll roads might take a different turn. where you're not going to be going through these little toll booths all the time.
Right.
I think just electronically, the ability to toll a road has really changed. But you can't really toll an I-75 when there's an exit every other mile.
That's true.
Until we get to the point where we are electronically knowing where those cars are, which is
A little scary.
fast here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Drollet?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Bill, both for the presentation. I appreciate it. I think you mentioned going on the road, essentially trying to explain the ballot proposal that was before voters a few years back. And I think it's common wisdom that the reason that failed by the margin it did is there's a lot of distrust among voters that the money that was actually going to be raised was going to go to the roads. And there was a lot of distrust of that. And the Act 51 road funding formula, there's an element to that as well. People don't trust that if they increase money into the formula that it's going to receive a benefit. One of the things that your chart doesn't show, probably for simplification purposes, is that up to 10% of the money is siphoned off for mass transit before it ever hits a road. And so that's a challenge, is that are people fearful that the money is actually going to go to the roads before it gets siphoned off for another empty bus or something like that. Another point I'd like to make on that point is, by the way, folks in Harrison Township, for example, might be more interested in a millage to fund roads if they weren't trapped without being able to opt out of, for example, let's say a smart millage. That they can do in Oakland County or Wayne County, they can opt out and decide to put the money toward the roads, but Macomb, in our infinite wisdom, we decided that no one can get out. You are trapped in whether you like it or not, and that's a higher priority for your community, how it votes, than the roads are. Similarly, with the RTA at a 1.9 mil, higher priority, you're trapped in even if your community is outvoted. So that's 3 mills right there that could go to roads if the local control was really local instead of a regional trap. Of course, it's not a regional trap in Oakland and Wayne County. They have opt-outs and so forth. So I just wanted to point out that I think taxpayers have a lot of distrust that the money that they're going to, ends up going into the formula ends up actually going to the roads. And I agree, you point out that in Michigan, we've got very few options. Everybody wants to go everybody sort of is funneled. When I say everybody, I mean the interests that want to fund particular projects is funneled toward the property taxes, because of certain constraints on income taxes and others. So, you end up in some communities with 4 or 5 proposals on the ballot at one time asking for taxes. And, then they wonder why there's a little fatigue.
It's, property taxes are always a challenge. As I used to work with the House Tax Policy Committee as the Republican advisor to that committee, boy, nothing is harder. I was there when Proposal A went through. There was a reason why it went through. But at the same time, it was interesting. 2 weeks ago, my nephew showed up at my office. He just moved into Roseville. He doesn't drive. And he came down because he was applying to grad school at Western, or at Wayne. And, he moved into Roseville specifically because it would give him the ability, to get from home, to go to grad school, to job. And one of the things that we have to deal with, especially at SEMCOG, is that we deal with transportation. Transportation does take many forms. While nobody rides trains that often, some do, believe me, it's really important when it comes to the movement of goods. We know how important the waterways are for the movement of goods and the ports along Detroit. We understand, and when you go downtown, when you walk in front of our office building and you see 25-year-olds, hundreds of them coming into their offices in their jeans and t-shirts, these are the new office workers. And they're coming from locations in downtown urban areas because a lot of them are coming in through mass transit. We have to take into account.
Interesting that those are the ones that have led the revolution away from mass transit by Uber, Lyft, and the alternatives. It's the young people who have been beating the path away And that's why you see ridership falling across the country, traditional mass transit.
They don't use that to get to work necessarily. They need a stable source to get them to work. They do use that to get them away from the main lines.
So
because they can't necessarily get to
So the
everywhere they
trolleys
want.
should be pretty full most of the time, right? Because they're going right down that main corridor. It should be exceeding expectations, right?
I've been in the downtown area now for 5.5 years.
Yeah.
I cannot believe the changes that have occurred in 5.5 years.
I can't either. The corporate welfare is flowing in billions, and we wonder where the road money is going.
The jobs that are flowing into downtown, the people that are flowing into downtown.
Yeah, as long as the money is redirected there, that's where people will go. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Drolet? Commissioner Duje, sorry.
Thank you. Interesting perspective.
Thank you.
A number of questions and a number of statements. Whenever you say centerline roads, what you mean by centerline and what I see as centerline are two totally separate things. You know, I'm thinking that the only one in centerline is Van Dyke and possibly Mound. But saying that, Warren already has a millage for roads. And the problem is, and the discussion that we've had here is, okay, you want to have a millage and ask for more money for roads on the county level. Well, okay, we're already taxing people for our own city. That's one. Two, there's no way Warren and Sterling Heights can tax enough people in order to raise enough money to fix a street like Mound.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way we're going
million.
to come up with 175 or whatever million to fix that kind of road. Now, I sincerely doubt if St. Clair County or some other county outstate, as they call it, has roads like we do and has the commerce that we have to have in such a small area. Do you actually look at how many roads, and I don't know how to put it, as far as roads like Mound, like Van Dyke, like M59, that are corridors for transportation going forward for business? Do you actually have a pie chart that has something like that? Or
So
whatever.
there is like a freight network map where we don't have it right now, but we could look at the freight network. Those are the roads that receive
Right.
most of the freight. Yes, we could.
You know, it's a combination of the roads and rail, and I've after everything's said and done, at one point in time, they were the feds, I think, were considering bypassing Detroit and going Chicago to Cleveland, if I'm not mistaken, and just totally bypassing Detroit as on the rail system. And that went, and this is about 10 years ago or so, maybe a little more than that. I would hope SEMCOG would step up to the plate and say, hey, how about us?
Definitely.
Now, gas taxes versus electric vehicles. What is SEMCOG's position on that, first of all? And second of all, this may be all academic, talking about taxes on gas and so on and so forth. If we all go electric vehicles that some people are talking about within the next 10 years, you won't have gas to tax. Right. Then what are we going to do?
Yes. We actually have had policies, and we will be talking about a policy tomorrow that identifies gasoline taxes as a declining revenue source in the long run. Now, the legislature dealt with it a little bit by increasing registration fees on electric and certain hybrids so that they're paying a little bit more on registration fees because they're not paying gas taxes. Right. And this is Bill Anderson speaking, not SEMCOG. But I think in reality, vehicle miles traveled, the things that we will be able to adjust to cost benefit will be much better. And we're getting to the point where that we can do that.
We just have a ways to go on that, so that's why we always go back to the gas tax, and that's what happens nationally.
you know,
Between, I mean, we've had the car companies say, you know, they are anti-VMT, you know, anti-getting in, the public is anti-knowing where I am at all times and having that GPS. So we've been trying to keep on top of needing more funding
You know,
and
they're,
investment, so
you
it's
know,
been
from my
difficult.
standpoint and all these futurists, if you want to call them that, have this feeling that nobody's going to own cars. If you want a car, you'll call, and the car will show up at your door and take you to wherever you want to go, and so on and so forth. I don't see that happening in the next 10 years, but I think SEMCOG really ought to start thinking in terms of what we're going to do post-gas tax and post, you know, I hope I'm dead by the time they outlaw gas vehicles. But that being said, what SEMCOG is going to do once they do get
Gas
rid of
taxes
gas.
are here. They are going to be very important as far as we want to look right now. We do know that as a revenue source, it is a declining revenue source.
Yeah.
And it has to be adjusted accordingly, or we need to wean ourselves off of that and wean ourselves off of a 100-year tradition and understand that it is a new century.
Is it already declining?
It was during the Great Recession. We were actually seeing declines in gas tax revenue. Its growth rate is slower, you know, and yeah, the more, you know.
You know, I can't imagine a quiet dream cruise, let's put it that way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other speakers in the first round? Seeing none, the second round, Commissioner Drollet, did you want to speak on the second round? No? Commissioner Kleinfeld, did you have something?
Just one sentence. He knows, as aggressive as my questioning might have been here, I was the one who saved him from a whole bunch of angry seniors in Warren, and I took the rap on his behalf, and he knows that. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
take nothing personally on any of these.
Need a motion to receive and file, moved by Drollet, supported by Douget. Please vote.
Thank you.
We're going to,
It's information makes good debate.
thank you for coming. We're going to item 7, budget reviews, Corporation Counsel, John Shapka.
Good afternoon,
Good
Commissioners.
afternoon.
This should be relatively quick and painless. So, Corporation Council budget is on page 45 of your agenda, I believe. It's about $1 million operation, 8.5 employees, no new positions for 2019. Total budget is increasing by about $36,000 or 3.3%. Most of that's being driven by the increase in the compensated absences charge and the liability insurance charge that we've spoken about previously. Full-time wages are going up 1.1%, which is the 1% across the board, plus a couple of newer employees moving their way through step grades. So from a dollar perspective, really nothing going on out of the ordinary here. If you have any operational questions, John's here to answer.
Okay, Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've added, I think it was a year or two ago, you added another attorney.
Yes,
How's that working out?
very well. Peter Jensen is dedicated to HR, does labor law, and fills in on some personal injury cases also.
Okay, and I don't obviously have the figures in front of me. I know from recollection that the numbers of cases that used to be sent out that we're now doing in-house, with the addition of, not only with yourself when you came in, you started taking more in-house, which was a good savings for the county. With that additional body, did that reduce additional outsourcing?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
We've outsourced no labor cases whatsoever since Peter joined. In the last 2 years, the only cases that we've outsourced were the matter involving former Clerk Springer, where she sued the board and the executive, and everyone in my office were witnesses in that case, so we couldn't take it. In the last 2 years, with that one exception, we haven't sent a single case out.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Dujay.
I think you got Drollet on there.
You're on there too.
Oh, okay.
Go
Fair
ahead,
enough.
Andre, you're first.
Actually, it's very timely that we got somebody in HR law a couple of years ago, before the debacle of the last couple of years. Somebody who got reimbursed for $15, really? In 2017, and you're putting it on this? Well, it could be.
It's almost a joke it's almost a joke in our office, but I make everybody recycle paper clips. And
You know what? You guys do a nice job, and it's nice to hear that you are doing more in-house and we're not sending things out. Other than the Spranger business, everything else has been done in-house.
everything's been done in-house. We've got the skills, we've got the talent. We have not yet run into those cases that would be beyond our skill set, like a class action.
Right.
Or cases that are just of such a huge magnitude that it would overwhelm the hours that all of us could put in on the case. Like a mass tort litigation case.
All right. Question, do we have to go in front? Are most of the cases here, or are there a number of cases that we have to go to federal court?
Most are in federal court, believe it or not.
Really?
Most of our cases, and I don't mean to slam the sheriff's office, but most of our lawsuits, the personal injury lawsuits, come up through the sheriff's office. These are our in-custody deaths,
Right.
conditions of confinement, false arrest, false imprisonment, and assault and battery type cases. Those will always be the biggest slice of our
And that's all
caseload.
federal?
Plaintiffs plead all of these as they should, as they can, and as they routinely do, as civil rights violations. That gives us a right to remove the case from state court to federal court,
Okay.
which costs us $350. Most plaintiffs, however, originally file it in federal court, and I'm very happy with that. We would try to maximize federal jurisdiction every time we can, get more conservative judges, far more conservative juries. The law itself is far more well-defined and developed under the federal precedents,
Okay.
and it's something the federal courts deal with. If you have a 14th Amendment due process violation in state court, the judge has never seen one before.
All right.
You spend all of your time educating and correcting errors by the other counsel also. So federal court is really the place to be.
All right. Very good. Well done. Nice job. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John, let me just say I'm glad it's not Krisha and Shapka partnership. You know, you've done a great job over the last year, and I'm glad we don't pay you by the hour in a sense. Do you know what I mean, for your billable hours?
Preparing this, I look back at the previous 12 months. You know, number of hours, types of cases, what we put in, and we gave the county about $5 million worth of value
Oh, yeah.
for the 1.1 million that we cost.
That's good lawyering at a good rate.
Next year.
Good lawyering at a good rate. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed in your long-term goals you'd like to increase the budget for attorney staff continuing legal education.
Yes.
Why doesn't your budget have a line item like all the rest of the others do with regard to conferences and training?
Conferences and training, first, CLEs, continuing legal education seminars, are required annually for attorneys who are licensed after a certain year. All of us are grandfathered in. We're a bunch
Right,
of
I don't
old-
need the long history. I'm
bunch of
just
old
wondering why
people.
your budget doesn't have a line item. That's all I need to know. Do you know?
Because we are all specialists in our field, and quite frankly, the law that we deal with has not changed in 20 years. There are no growing trends in 1983 law or election law that Frank Krisha specializes in election law, anything doing with government taxation. That's all Frank's bailiwick. That hasn't changed in decades.
Okay, but if they need the continuing legal education, that might be something we need to address in the future, putting that line
It may
item
be
in.
something that would be addressed in the future.
Okay.
Peter has asked for one seminar. We actually pulled the money out of our publications budget, a couple of other line items where we can shift money around.
Okay. Because, I mean, the line item should be in here, and it should have dashes for zeros. At least the line items should, all the line items should be the same in all the budgets, it seems like. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John, thank you for the summary here. The money that we spend on outsourced attorneys, is that within this particular budget? Does it fall within this
that
budget?
money has never been within the Corp Council's budget. It's within the insurance, I never have the right name for it. I call it the Insurance Defense Fund,
Okay.
which is a fund run out of finance. It pays for outside attorneys. It pays for a lot of other things, administrative claims, payments, insurance for the county, things of that nature.
Okay. So then, I guess my next question might be to Steve, and that would be this. If we have been handling more and more cases in-house, and therefore having to outsource many fewer cases, and therefore saving money, would it be possible to look at what the county has spent on outsourcing for attorneys, not related to indigent, fees, covering the, but as far as lawsuits against the county or the sheriff's department and so forth? It'd be interesting to see where we are today compared to where we were 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, or 3 years ago, or 10 years ago, and see that savings taking place. Now that
we
we're
have
handling,
that.
that'd be great to be able to see.
I think we might have provided something similar to that last year.
Okay.
We just need to update it for 2017.
That would make it, hopefully you did, because that'd
You
make
may
it a
ask the
little
question,
easier.
well, okay, we have all these cases in-house, we're saving money with the liability insurance charges going up. It's only because of the number of lawsuits we're having.
Yes.
So-
In the
And
claims.
settlement of those lawsuits
So-
comes out of that fund also.
Okay, so I guess just looking at legal fees, what we're paying, has that, where has that gone in the last few years, outside legal fees? And then just looking at your summary line in the budget, it shows about running even with CPI roughly between 2012 and 2015. And then we're starting to trend above CPI in the expectation of spending. Is there something driving that? Is that,
Well, what's being driven there is the addition of the staff folks.
Yeah.
In
Okay.
17.
okay?
So
So
we're adding salaries and
that
benefits.
could be then offset by looking at the savings that we're getting from not
Right, and that
outsourcing.
savings is being spread across the entire budget, not strictly in Corp Council.
Right, so, okay, that's, I guess, why I asked for it, because I thought it might be driving that. It's unfair to look and say, wow, you're going above the, spending above the CPI, not looking at the savings that we're getting on the other end. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers, we need a motion to receive and file. Moved by Carabelli, supported by Duje. Please vote. Item 8 is a closed session for purpose of discussing pending litigation. I do have to read these all out because of state law. M.E. Jojo Coughlin versus Wickersham, Craig Meyer versus CMH and Kinch, City of St. Clair Shores versus Treasurer, Troy Equity versus City of Warren, Robert Irwin versus Clerk Sheriff, Natalie Olson versus Rhodes, M.E. Joe Coughlin versus County Wickersham, City of East Point versus Treasurer, Anthony Marco versus Clerk, Markagi Enterprises versus Rhodes, Manuel Horn versus County, Jeter versus County, Preston versus County, and finally Odisho versus County. We need a motion to go, moved by, who made that motion? Carabelli, supported by Leonetti. Please vote.
He's not in a lawsuit yet. It's just what came in the last 30 days, what went out in the last 30 days. This is just a 30-day snapshot.